Well, I'll be hornswoggled. In all my 73 years on this green earth, I never thought I'd see a raccoon crying real tears. But there she was on my front porch at 6 in the morning. This mama raccoon with water streaming down that little black mask of hers, holding her baby like it was the most precious thing in creation. That little one wasn't moving much, just hanging limp in his mama's mouth like a rag doll somebody forgot to love. His tiny chest was barely rising and falling, and Lord help me, I could see he was slipping away fast. Martha always said animals could sense good people. And maybe that's why this desperate mother chose my doorstep out of all the houses in Willow Creek. But standing there in my old flannel pajamas, staring into those pleading eyes, I knew one thing for certain. Something told me I had precious little time to make a difference between life and death. Leave a like and share your thoughts in the comments along with the city you're watching from now. Let's continue with the story. 2 years of talking to shadows, that's what my life had become since Martha passed. Every morning I'd set out 2 coffee cups from pure habit, then remember she wasn't coming back to drink hers. The house felt too big, too quiet, like all the love had just up and walked out the front door with her. But this morning was different. This mama raccoon wasn't asking for much, just a miracle I wasn't sure I could deliver. Her baby's breathing was getting shallower by the minute, and those little paws were going cold in the crisp autumn air. I could see the desperation in her eyes, the same look Martha used to get when she'd find injured birds in our backyard. What would Martha do? I whispered to myself, carefully scooping up that tiny bundle of fur. Martha would have known exactly what to do. She always did with hurt creatures. She'd have had the heating pad ready, warm towels, maybe even some of that special formula she kept for emergencies. Inside my kitchen, I fumbled around like a fool, trying to remember her techniques. I wrapped the little guy in my softest dish towel and cranked up the thermostat. His mama followed me right to the door but wouldn't come inside, just sat there watching through the screen, never taking her eyes off her baby. I grabbed the phone and called Dr. Sarah Whitman over in the next county. "Doc, this is Earl Patterson. I've got a dying raccoon baby here and his mama brought him right to my door. Can you—" "Mr. Patterson," she cut me off, "I don't treat wild animals. That's against regulations. You need to call animal control." Animal control meant one thing. They'd take this little fighter away from his mama forever. "Please, Doc. This little one's barely breathing." "I'm sorry, but my hands are tied. Good luck." Click. That's when I heard Mrs. Henderson's voice carrying over from next door. "That man's finally lost his marbles, talking to raccoons like they're people." She was probably already dialing the authorities the way she always stuck her nose where it didn't belong. But looking down at this tiny creature fighting for every breath, I felt something I hadn't felt since Martha died. Purpose. This little guy was depending on me, and his mama had chosen to trust me with the most precious thing she had. The clock on my kitchen wall seemed to tick louder with each passing second. Every minute mattered now, and I was running out of time to save a life that somehow felt connected to my own healing. 3 years ago, Martha found a raccoon family living under our back porch, and Lord knows we had ourselves a real disagreement about it. I was sitting right here at this same kitchen table, watching her through the window as she knelt down with a bowl of cat food and some fresh water. "Martha, honey, what in tarnation are you doing?" I called out, stepping onto the porch. "Those are wild animals, not house pets." She looked up at me with that patient smile of hers, the one that always made me feel like I was missing something important. "Earl Patterson, every creature on God's green earth deserves a chance at life. This mama's got babies to feed, and they're not hurting anybody." "They're varmints," I argued, crossing my arms. "They'll get into the garbage, tear up the garden, maybe even carry diseases. We've got enough problems without inviting more." Martha stood up slowly, brushing the dirt off her gardening apron. "You know what your problem is, Earl?" You've forgotten what it means to show compassion to something that can't pay you back." That stung more than I cared to admit. I show plenty of compassion, I just don't waste it on raccoons when there are people in this world who need help. "It's not about waste," she said quietly. "It's about recognizing that love doesn't come with a checklist. When you see something suffering, you either help or you don't. It's that simple." I watched her continue feeding those raccoons for weeks, talking to them like they were old friends. The mama raccoon would bring her babies closer each day, until finally they were eating right out of Martha's hands. I thought it was foolish then, all that time and attention spent on wild animals. But then Martha got sick. The cancer came fast and mean, and suddenly we had bigger worries than raccoons in the backyard. I spent every waking hour either at the hospital or taking care of her at home. Those raccoons kept coming around, but I ignored them. Had more important things on my mind. Martha noticed, of course. She always noticed everything. "Earl, you haven't been feeding my raccoon family," she said one evening as I helped her up to bed. "Haven't had time," I replied, trying to keep the exhaustion out of my voice. "Been a little busy taking care of my wife." She stopped walking and looked at me with those tired but determined eyes. "Promise me something. Anything, honey. You know that. Promise me you'll keep taking care of them after I'm gone. Promise me you won't let my animal rescue dreams die with me." I would have promised her the moon if she'd asked. "Of course I will. Don't you worry about that." But I didn't keep that promise. After Martha passed, I stopped putting food out. I stopped caring about anything much, if I'm being honest. Those raccoons would come around for weeks looking for Martha, looking for the kindness she'd shown them. Eventually, they stopped coming. Until this morning. Now, looking down at this little one fighting for every breath, I recognized something in his mama's eyes. This was the same raccoon family Martha had cared for. This mama remembered kindness, remembered that this house was once a place of safety. She'd brought her dying baby to the one place she thought might still hold hope. "I'm sorry, Martha," I whispered to the empty room. "I should have listened to you more. Should have kept my promise." The baby raccoon stirred slightly in the towel, and I felt a surge of determination I hadn't experienced in 2 years. I wasn't going to fail again. Not this time. I tried calling Dr. Whitman again, but she wouldn't even answer. Then I remembered old Pete Morrison, who used to help Martha with injured animals. His phone just rang and rang. Time was slipping away like sand through my fingers. Outside, I could hear Mrs. Henderson talking loudly to someone, probably on the phone. "Yes, that's right. Earl Patterson has raccoons in his house, probably rabid. Someone needs to do something before they attack the neighborhood children." The little guy in my arms made a soft, whimpering sound, so faint I almost missed it. His mama heard it, though. She pressed her nose against the screen door and made a gentle, chittering noise back. It was the sound of a mother trying to comfort her child, and it broke my heart clean in two. I thought about Martha's words. When you see something suffering, you either help or you don't. It's that simple. She was right, like she usually was. This wasn't about regulations or what the neighbors thought. This was about keeping a promise I should have kept 2 years ago. "Don't you worry, little fella," I said softly. "Your mama brought you to the right place. Martha's not here to help you herself, but I'm going to do everything she would have done and then some." The clock was still ticking, loud as thunder in the quiet house. I had maybe hours, not days, to figure out how to save this tiny life. But for the first time since Martha died, I felt like I had a purpose again. This little raccoon was going to live if I had anything to say about it. That's when I heard the car doors slamming outside, and I knew our quiet morning was about to get a whole lot more complicated. The little guy's chest stopped moving. Just like that. No warning, no final struggle, just stillness that made my blood run cold. I held him up to the light, and there was nothing. No breath, No heartbeat I could feel, nothing but a tiny body that had given up the fight. "Oh no, you don't," I said, my voice shaking. "Don't you dare quit on me now." I'd seen Martha do mouth-to-mouth on a baby bird once, and Lord help me, I wasn't about to let this little fighter slip away without trying everything. I tilted his tiny head back, opened that small mouth, and breathed the gentlest puff of air I could manage into his lungs. Once, twice, 3 times. Nothing. Outside, his mama started making a sound I'd never heard before. A keening cry that went straight through me like a knife. She knew. Somehow she knew her baby was slipping away. I tried again, pressing gently on his little chest between breaths. "Come on, little bandit," I whispered, not even realizing I'd given him a name. "Your mama didn't bring you all this way for nothing." Then, like a miracle straight from heaven, his chest rose. Just a tiny movement, but it was there. He took a shaky breath, then another. I nearly cried with relief. That's when I heard the heavy footsteps on my porch. "Mr. Patterson, this is Officer Jake Miller from Animal Control. I need to speak with you." Through the screen door, I could see a tall man in uniform, hat in his hands. He looked uncomfortable, like he'd rather be anywhere else. Behind him stood Mrs. Henderson, arms crossed, wearing that self-righteous expression I'd come to know so well. "Officer Miller," I said, still holding Bandit close to my chest. "What can I do for you?" "Sir, I've received a report that you're harboring wild animals. That's a violation of state wildlife regulations. I'm going to need you to turn over any animals you might have." Mrs. Henderson stepped forward. I saw him take a raccoon into his house, probably rabid. "It's a danger to the whole neighborhood." Officer Miller held up a hand. "Ma'am, let me handle this." He looked at me with tired eyes. "Mr. Patterson, I knew your wife, Martha. She was a good woman, helped a lot of animals over the years. But the law's the law." "This little one's dying," I said simply. "His mama brought him to me because she remembered kindness. You want to take him away to die in some cage?" The officer shifted uncomfortably. "Sir, I understand your feelings, but I have protocols to follow. If the animal is injured, we can take it to a licensed facility, where they'll put him down because he's too small and too weak to be worth saving," I shot back. "That what Martha would have wanted?" Officer Miller was quiet for a long moment. "Look, Mr. Patterson, I can give you 48 hours. That's all. After that, I have to follow through on this complaint or I'll have my supervisor breathing down my neck. Use that time to find a licensed wildlife rehabilitator." Mrs. Henderson's face turned red. 48 hours! That animal could attack someone. It could have rabies." "Mrs. Henderson," Officer Miller said firmly, "raccoons with rabies don't typically show nurturing behavior toward their young. This mama's been sitting peacefully on his porch for hours. She's not aggressive." After they left, I called every number I could think of. The Wildlife Rehabilitation Center was full. The emergency animal hospital said they don't treat wild animals. 3 veterinarians in the county all gave me the same answer: regulations, liability, insurance wouldn't cover it. That's when I decided to do some detective work of my own. Something about this whole situation didn't sit right. A healthy baby raccoon doesn't just collapse for no reason. I remembered Martha mentioning something about poisoned animals a few years back, before she got sick. I walked around the neighborhood looking for anything unusual. Behind the Henderson house, I found something that made my stomach turn: a scattered pile of what looked like rat poison pellets near the tree line where the raccoons probably denned up. But something was off. Mrs. Henderson was many things, but she wasn't cruel to animals. She just complained about them. This felt different, more systematic. I kept looking, checking other yards, other properties. 3 houses down, behind the new development, I found more poison, and more behind the elementary school. Someone was deliberately targeting the local wildlife population. When I got back home, little Bandit was breathing easier, and his mama had moved closer to the door. She looked at me with those intelligent eyes, and I swear she knew I was trying to help. That evening, Mrs. Henderson surprised me by knocking on my door. "Earl," she said, not quite meeting my eyes, "I owe you an apology." "Do you now?" "I found poison in my backyard. Same kind you probably found elsewhere. I didn't put it there." She paused, wrapping her sweater tighter around herself. "Someone's been sneaking around, putting that stuff out deliberately." "Any idea who?" She shook her head. "But Earl, I want you to know, if animal control comes back, I'll help you hide that little one. What I saw today, watching you bring him back from the brink, it reminded me of something." "What's that?" "My grandson used to bring me herd animals when he was little, before the accident." Her voice got quiet. I'd forgotten how good it felt to save something innocent. That night, as I sat watching Bandit sleep in his makeshift nest, I realized this was about more than one sick raccoon. Someone in our community was poisoning innocent animals, and I was going to find out who. But first, I had to keep this little guy alive long enough to give him a fighting chance. Time was running out. I had less than 40 hours left, and Bandit was still so weak he could barely lift his head. But for the first time in 2 years, I felt like Martha was right there beside me, guiding my hands, reminding me that every creature deserves a chance at life. The fight was just beginning. The next morning brought news that turned my blood to ice water. Mrs. Henderson called before sunrise, her voice shaking like autumn leaves. "Earl, you need to come see this. Behind the Miller property, down by the creek." I found her standing over 3 small bodies, 2 squirrels and a possum, all lying peaceful as if they'd just laid down for a nap. But I knew better. The same telltale signs were there, the foam around their mouths, the way their little paws were curled up tight. "This is the 5th location I've found this morning," Mrs. Henderson said, pulling her coat tighter. "Someone's been real busy." I knelt down and examined the area carefully, the way Martha had taught me when we'd find sick animals in our yard. Sure enough, scattered between the fallen leaves were more of those blue-green pellets. But these weren't the standard rat poison you'd buy at the hardware store. These looked different, more professional, more deadly. "Dolores," I said, using her first name for maybe the first time in 20 years, "this isn't some homeowner trying to control pests. This is systematic." She nodded grimly. "I've been thinking the same thing. Who benefits from killing off every wild animal in a 5-mile radius?" That's when it hit me like a ton of bricks. I remembered Martha coming home angry one day, about 3 years back, talking about some big shot from the city trying to push through a development project. She'd spoken at a town meeting, arguing that the local wildlife needed protection, that building luxury condos would destroy their habitat. "Dolores, do you remember when Pinnacle Development wanted to build those fancy condos down by the nature preserve?" Her eyes widened. "The project that got voted down because of environmental concerns, because Martha and her animal lovers raised such a fuss?" "The very one. What if someone's trying to clear the area of wildlife before proposing the project again?" "I can't claim environmental damage if there are no animals left to protect." We spent the rest of the morning gathering evidence, taking pictures, collecting samples of the poison pellets. By noon, we had documented 12 separate poisoning sites across the area where Pinnacle had wanted to build. When I got back home, I found a surprise waiting on my porch, a black pickup truck with Pinnacle Development logos on the side. A man in an expensive suit was peering through my screen door trying to see inside. "Can I help you?" I called out, making him jump. He turned around with a practiced smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Mr. Patterson? I'm Richard Caldwell, Regional Manager for Pinnacle Development. I heard you've been having some trouble with wildlife on your property." "Is that so?" These things happen in rural areas. Wild animals can be dangerous, carry diseases. We offer a comprehensive pest control service that might interest you. He handed me a glossy brochure. Very effective, very permanent. I looked at that brochure and felt my temper rising like mercury in July. You wouldn't happen to know anything about animals turning up dead all over the neighborhood, would you? His smile faltered just a fraction. Wild animals die, Mr. Patterson. It's nature. But we can prevent future problems if you're interested in our services. Get off my property. Now, there's no need to be hostile. We're just trying to help the community. I said get off my property before I call the sheriff. After he left, I sat on my porch thinking about what Martha would do. She'd want justice, but she'd want it done right. That's when I decided to call my grandson Tommy in Chicago. The boy had always been smart, worked with computers and such. If anyone could help me figure out how to expose these people, it would be him. The phone rang 3 times before a familiar voice answered. Grandpa Duke. Is everything okay? Hearing Tommy call me by my old nickname nearly brought tears to my eyes. We hadn't spoken in 2 years, not since Martha's funeral when harsh words were said about him not visiting enough while she was sick. Tommy, boy, I need your help. It's complicated, but there's something bad happening here in Willow Creek, and I think your computer skills might be just what we need. I told him everything, about Bandit, about the poisonings, about Pinnacle Development. There was a long pause when I finished. Grandpa, are you telling me you're taking care of a baby raccoon in your house? That's what I'm telling you. Another pause. And Grandma Martha used to take care of his family? She did. I'll be there in 6 hours. While I waited for Tommy, I sat with little Bandit, who was finally starting to show some real improvement. He could lift his head now, and his eyes were brighter. His mama had moved even closer, actually sleeping on my porch instead of hiding in the woods. That afternoon, Officer Miller stopped by again, looking more uncomfortable than before. Mr. Patterson, I've got some bad news. My supervisor got wind of this situation. He's demanding I come back tomorrow morning with a warrant if necessary. I can't stall any longer. Jake, I said, what if I told you this raccoon family was deliberately poisoned? What if I told you I had evidence of a corporation systematically killing wildlife to further a development project? His demeanor changed completely. Do you have proof? I showed him the photos, the poison samples, told him about Caldwell's visit. He listened with growing anger. This is bigger than animal control, he said finally. This is criminal, environmental crimes, possibly conspiracy. He looked at Bandit sleeping peacefully in his nest. But I still have my orders about the raccoon. Give me until tomorrow evening. That's all I ask. My grandson's coming home and he might be able to help us crack this thing wide open. Officer Miller was quiet for a long moment. I can't promise anything official. But hypothetically, if I happened to be out on other calls tomorrow morning and couldn't make it by until late afternoon, well, these things happen. That evening, just as the sun was setting behind the oak trees, I heard a car pulling into my driveway. Through the window, I saw a young man getting out of a blue Honda, taller than I remembered, but still with that same determined set to his shoulders that reminded me so much of Martha. Tommy Patterson was coming home. As he walked up the porch steps, little Bandit stirred in his nest and made a soft, chittering sound. His mama, who had been wary of every stranger for days, looked at Tommy and didn't retreat. She just watched him with those intelligent eyes, as if she somehow knew he was family. "Hello, Grandpa," Tommy said quietly. "I've missed you. I've missed you too, boy. More than you know." Tommy knelt down beside Bandit's makeshift nest, and I watched something beautiful happen. That little raccoon, who'd been so weak he could barely lift his head, suddenly perked up and reached out with one tiny paw toward my grandson. Tommy gently extended his finger, and Bandit wrapped those delicate digits around it like he was shaking hands. "Well, I'll be," I whispered. "He knows your family." "Grandma always said animals could sense good people," Tommy replied, his voice thick with emotion. "I should have come home sooner, Grandpa. When you called about this, I realized how much I've missed, how much I've lost by staying away." We sat there in the lamplight of my living room, 3 generations brought together by one small creature's fight for life. Outside, Mama Raccoon had settled herself right against the screen door, close enough to watch over her baby but trusting enough to rest. "Tell me about these pinnacle development people," Tommy said, pulling out his laptop. "I did some research on the drive down here, and what I found isn't pretty." For the next 2 hours, Tommy showed me things that made my blood boil. Pinnacle development had a history of this kind of behavior. Moving into rural communities, systematically eliminating wildlife, then swooping in with development proposals when the environmental concerns magically disappeared. "Look at this," Tommy said, pointing to his screen. 3 other communities in Michigan, all the same pattern. Mysterious wildlife die-offs followed by successful development projects. They've perfected this system. But how do we prove it? Tommy's fingers flew across the keyboard. "I've been tracking the chemical composition of those poison pellets you found. This isn't standard rodenticide. This is a restricted compound that requires special licensing to purchase." Just then we heard a car door slam outside. Through the window I saw Mrs. Henderson hurrying across her yard toward my house, still in her nightgown and slippers. "Earl! Tommy!" she called through the screen. "You need to see this right now." We followed her to her backyard, where she pointed toward the tree line with a shaking finger. I couldn't sleep, so I was watching out my kitchen window. A man in coveralls just spread more poison back there. When he saw my light come on, he ran. Tommy grabbed a flashlight from my truck and we searched the area. Sure enough, fresh poison pellets were scattered around the base of the old oak tree where I'd seen raccoon families playing just last week. "Mrs. Henderson," Tommy said urgently, "did you get a look at the vehicle he was driving?" "Black pickup truck. Had some kind of logo on the side, but I couldn't make it out in the dark." Back in my kitchen, Tommy pulled up Pinnacle Development's website and showed us their service vehicle gallery. There it was, black pickup trucks with the company logo described as environmental management vehicles. "Environmental management," I muttered. "That's what they call poisoning innocent animals." Tommy was already on his phone. "I'm calling a friend of mine from college. She works for the EPA now, specializes in environmental crimes. If anyone can help us build a case, it's Sarah Chen." While Tommy made his calls, I sat with Bandit, who was now alert enough to drink water from a small saucer. His improvement over the past 24 hours was remarkable, but I knew we weren't out of the woods yet. The poison was still working its way through his tiny system. Around midnight, Mrs. Henderson knocked on the door again, this time carrying a thermos of coffee and a plate of her famous oatmeal cookies. "Figured you boys might need some fuel for whatever you're planning," she said, settling into Martha's old chair at the kitchen table. "I've been thinking about this whole situation and I want to help however I can. Dolores, you've already done more than enough." "No, Earl, I haven't." She looked down at her hands. "I need to tell you something about why I've been so harsh about the animals all these years." Tommy and I waited while she gathered her thoughts. "My grandson Billy used to bring me injured animals, just like you're doing with this little one. Birds with broken wings, baby rabbits, once even a young fox. I always made him put them back where he found them, said it was nature's way, that we shouldn't interfere." Her voice got quiet and I could see tears forming in her eyes. The day before Billy's accident, he found a baby deer caught in some fence wire. He begged me to help, but I said no. Made him leave it there. Billy died in that car crash, still upset with me about that deer. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. I've spent 8 years regretting that I chose rules over compassion, watching you fight for this little raccoon, seeing how much joy it's brought you even in the midst of grief. It's reminded me who I used to be before I got so hard. Tommy reached across the table and squeezed her hand. Mrs. Henderson, my grandma always said it's never too late to choose kindness. Just after 2 a.m., Tommy's phone rang. His EPA friend had worked through the night, running tests on the chemical analysis Tommy had sent her. "Grandpa, you're not going to believe this," Tommy said after hanging up. "That poison is military grade. It's not even supposed to be available to civilian contractors. Sarah's traced the purchase orders, and they all lead back to a shell company owned by Pinnacle Development's parent corporation." "What does that mean for us?" "It means we've got them. Federal environmental crimes, illegal procurement of restricted chemicals, conspiracy to commit fraud. Sarah's flying in tomorrow morning with a full investigation team." As dawn broke over Willow Creek, I felt something I hadn't experienced in 2 years, hope mixed with purpose. Little Bandit was not only going to survive, but his poisoning might be the key to bringing down people who'd been systematically destroying wildlife for profit. Tommy dozed off in Martha's chair, his laptop still open on the table. Mrs. Henderson had gone home to get some proper clothes, promising to return with breakfast for everyone. And there I sat, an old widower who'd thought his useful days were behind him, holding a baby raccoon who'd somehow managed to change everything. Outside, Mama Raccoon stirred as the first rays of sunlight hit the porch. She looked through the screen at her baby, then at me, and I swear she nodded once before settling back down to wait. She trusted me completely now, this wild mother who'd chosen to believe that humans could still do good in this world. Martha would have been proud of the Raccoon family surviving, of Tommy coming home, of Mrs. Henderson finding her compassion again, of a community coming together to fight for what's right. "We did it, honey," I whispered to the morning air. "We kept our promise after all." The knock on my door at 7 in the morning wasn't gentle. It was the kind of authoritative pounding that makes your heart skip a beat and your coffee cup rattle in its saucer. "Mr. Patterson, this is Deputy Chief Morrison from Animal Control. Open the door immediately." Through the window, I could see not just Officer Miller looking uncomfortable behind a stern-faced woman in a crisp uniform, but also that slick Pinnacle Development man, Caldwell, standing beside a black SUV with tinted windows. Tommy was instantly awake, closing his laptop and moving toward the back of the house where we'd set up Bandit's recovery area. "Grandpa, take them out front. I'll stay with Bandit and his mama." "Earl Patterson," Deputy Chief Morrison called out again, "I have a court order here requiring you to surrender any wildlife currently on your premises. You have 60 seconds to comply." I opened the door but didn't step aside. "Good morning, Deputy Chief." "Lovely weather we're having." She wasn't amused. "Mr. Patterson, I'm not here to chat about the weather. Where is the raccoon?" "What raccoon would that be?" Caldwell stepped forward with that oily smile of his. "Now, Mr. Patterson, let's not make this harder than it needs to be. We're all just trying to do what's best for the community. And poisoning innocent animals is what's best for the community?" The smile faltered. "I'm afraid I don't know what you're talking about." That's when Mrs. Henderson appeared from around the side of my house, carrying a cardboard box and wearing rubber gloves. "Earl, I found 3 more dead squirrels behind the Kowalski place. Same blue-green poison pellets scattered everywhere." Deputy Chief Morrison looked confused. "What's this about poison?" I was about to answer when Tommy's voice called out from inside the house. "Grandpa, you need to see this right now." We all turned toward the sound. And that's when I noticed Caldwell had gone pale as a ghost. He was backing toward his SUV, pulling out his cell phone. "I think we should postpone this investigation," he said quickly. "Let the proper authorities handle any alleged environmental issues." "Oh, but we are the proper authorities," came a new voice from the driveway. A woman in a dark blue windbreaker with EPA emblazoned across the back was walking toward us, flanked by two men in similar jackets carrying official-looking cases. "Sarah Chen, Environmental Protection Agency," she said, showing her badge to Deputy Chief Morrison. "We're here investigating reports of illegal wildlife poisoning in this area." Caldwell was now frantically typing on his phone. "I need to contact my legal department." "Mr. Caldwell," Agent Chen said calmly, "I'd advise you to stay exactly where you are. We have some questions for you." Inside my house, something extraordinary was happening. Tommy had managed to get Little Bandit to take his first solid food, small pieces of fruit that he was nibbling with obvious enjoyment. More importantly, Mama Raccoon had finally come inside. She was sitting just a few feet away from her baby, close enough to comfort him but far enough to give Tommy space to help. "Agent Chen," Tommy called out, "you need to see this." The EPA agent stepped inside and immediately understood the significance of what she was seeing. "This is the poisoned animal?" "His name's Bandit," I said. "And yes, he's the one who nearly died from whatever chemicals those people have been spreading around." Agent Chen knelt down and examined Bandit carefully, taking photos and making notes. "This level of recovery from carbofuran poisoning is remarkable. Most animals this small don't survive exposure." "Carbofuran?" Tommy asked. "Highly restricted pesticide. Illegal for civilian use. Causes neurological damage, respiratory failure, death within hours." She looked up at me with newfound respect. "Mr. Patterson, your care of this animal may have saved more than just his life. He's living proof of the criminal activity we've been tracking." That's when everything went sideways. Caldwell, who'd been making increasingly frantic phone calls, suddenly shouted, "Execute cleanup protocol now!" into his phone. Within minutes, we could hear the roar of heavy machinery from multiple directions around the neighborhood. "They're destroying evidence," Agent Chen said grimly, speaking rapidly into her radio. "All units converge on Willow Creek immediately." Through my kitchen window, I could see a large truck with a tank attachment moving through the woods behind Mrs. Henderson's house, spraying something that was killing the vegetation instantly. Another truck was doing the same thing near the elementary school. 60 years of forest, Mrs. Henderson said, tears streaming down her face. "They're destroying 60 years of forest growth to cover their tracks." Deputy Chief Morrison, who'd been quiet through all this, finally spoke up. "Officer Miller, we're standing down on the animal removal. This is now a federal crime scene." But Caldwell wasn't done. From his SUV, he pulled out what looked like a professional-grade pest control sprayer. "If I can't have the development, nobody gets anything." He was heading straight for my house, and I realized with horror that he intended to poison the area where Bandit and his mama were recovering. "Like hell you will," I shouted, stepping off my porch to block his path. Tommy came running out behind me, and suddenly we had Mrs. Henderson, Officer Miller, and even Deputy Chief Morrison forming a human wall between Caldwell and my front door. "Stand aside," Caldwell snarled, his corporate veneer completely gone now. "Those animals are going to die one way or another." That's when Mama Raccoon did something I'll never forget as long as I live. She came charging out of my house, moving faster than I'd ever seen a raccoon move, and launched herself straight at Caldwell. She didn't attack him exactly, but she positioned herself between him and the door, chattering angrily and making herself look as large and threatening as possible. It was a mother protecting her baby, pure and simple. And it was the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen. Caldwell stumbled backward, dropping the sprayer, which Agent Chen immediately secured as evidence. Within seconds, he was surrounded by EPA agents and being read his rights. As they led him away, he turned back toward my house with pure hatred in his eyes. "This isn't over, old man. You have no idea who you're dealing with." But I wasn't afraid anymore. Standing there with my grandson, my transformed neighbor, law enforcement officers who'd chosen to do the right thing, and a raccoon family that had taught us all about trust and perseverance, I felt stronger than I had in years. "Bring it on," I called after him. "We're ready." Agent Chen approached me as the chaos settled down. "Mr. Patterson, I need you to know that what you've done here is going to help us shut down a criminal enterprise that spans multiple states. That little raccoon of yours is going to be the star witness in a major federal case." "He's going to be okay then?" "Better than okay. He's going to be famous. And more importantly, he's going to be free to live the life he was meant to live." As the sun reached its peak in the afternoon sky, I sat on my porch, watching Bandit play gently with a piece of string while his mama groomed herself nearby. Tommy was on his laptop, coordinating with the EPA investigators, Mrs. Henderson was making a fresh pot of coffee for everyone. We'd won this battle, but I knew Caldwell was right about one thing: this wasn't over. People like him don't give up easily. But for today, we had saved one small life, exposed a corporate conspiracy, and reminded ourselves that sometimes the most important fights are the ones we never planned to have. The phone call came at 3 in the morning, jolting me from the first peaceful sleep I'd had in days. Agent Chen's voice was tight with urgency. "Mr. Patterson, we have a problem. Caldwell made bail, and our surveillance team lost him 2 hours ago. We think he's heading back to Willow Creek." I sat up in bed, my heart hammering against my ribs. "What does that mean for us?" "It means you and that raccoon family are in danger. Caldwell's desperate, and desperate men do stupid things. We're sending protective detail to your house immediately." But as I hung up the phone, I heard something that made my blood freeze. The sound of vehicles moving slowly down my street with their lights off. Through my bedroom window, I could see at least 3 dark shapes positioned around my property. I crept down the hall to Tommy's room. "Boy, wake up, we've got trouble." Tommy was instantly alert, grabbing his phone and laptop. "What kind of trouble?" "The kind that means we need to get Bandit and his mama to safety right now." In the living room, Mama Raccoon was already agitated, pacing back and forth near the window. Animals know when danger is coming. It's an instinct we humans have mostly lost. Little Bandit, now strong enough to walk around on his own, was huddled close to his mother, sensing her fear. "Tommy, take them out the back door. Head for Mrs. Henderson's house. She's got that storm cellar. What about you, Grandpa? Someone needs to face whatever's coming. That's what your grandma would do." Tommy grabbed my arm. "Grandma would want us to stick together, all of us." That's when we heard the voice amplified through a bullhorn from outside. "Earl Patterson, you have something that belongs to my client. Send out the raccoons and nobody gets hurt." I looked out the front window and felt my stomach drop. Caldwell was standing beside one of the trucks, but he wasn't alone. 3 men in tactical gear were positioned around my yard, and they were carrying what looked like professional wildlife capture equipment. "This is a federal crime scene," I shouted back. "The EPA has jurisdiction here." "The EPA isn't here right now, old man. It's just you, me, and unfinished business." Mrs. Henderson's porch light came on across the yard, and I saw her figure silhouetted in her doorway. She was holding something in her hands, her late husband's hunting rifle, if I had to guess. "Dolores, stay inside," I called out, but she was already moving across her yard toward my house. "Earl Patterson, you stubborn fool, those animals are under my protection too." One of the tactical men moved to intercept her, but she raised that rifle like she knew how to use it. "I suggest you step aside, young man. I've been shooting varmints longer than you've been breathing." That's when everything went wrong all at once. Tommy, who'd been trying to slip out the back door with the raccoons, came running back inside. "Grandpa, there are more men out back. We're surrounded." Little Bandit, overwhelmed by all the noise and fear, suddenly went limp in Tommy's arms. The stress was too much for his recovering system. He was crashing again, just like that first morning. Mama Raccoon let out a wail that cut straight through me. She'd brought her baby to me for help, trusted me to keep him safe, and now I was failing her when she needed me most. "Caldwell," I shouted through the door. "The baby's dying. Whatever you want. It's not worth this." "Then send them out. My client has invested too much money to let one sick animal destroy everything." That's when I realized the horrible truth. This wasn't just about covering up the poisoning anymore. Caldwell's mysterious client, whoever was really behind Pinnacle Development, needed these raccoons dead to prevent them from testifying in court. As long as Bandit lived, he was evidence of their crimes. Tommy was frantically trying to revive Bandit, doing the same mouth-to-mouth technique I'd used days earlier. "Come on, little guy. Don't give up now." I made a decision that might have been stupid or brave. I never did figure out which. I opened my front door and stepped out onto the porch, hands raised. "I'm Earl Patterson, and this is my property. You want these raccoons? You'll have to go through me first." Caldwell smiled, but it was the coldest thing I'd ever seen. "That can be arranged." But before anyone could move, we heard the most beautiful sound in the world. Sirens. Lots of them, coming from every direction. Agent Chen's voice crackled through a loudspeaker. "Federal agents, drop your weapons and step away from the residence." The tactical men looked at each other uncertainly. Whatever Caldwell was paying them, it apparently wasn't enough to take on the FBI. "This isn't over!" Caldwell screamed as federal agents swarmed the yard. "You have no idea what you're interfering with." As they dragged him away in handcuffs, he turned back one more time. "Check the old county records, Patterson. Check who really owns the mineral rights under this land. You'll understand why those animals had to die." Agent Chen approached me as the chaos died down. "Mr. Patterson, we intercepted communications that led us here. Caldwell wasn't working alone. This goes all the way up to the state level. Environmental crimes, bribery, conspiracy. What about Bandit?" We rushed inside to find Tommy still working over the little raccoon, but this time Mrs. Henderson was there too, holding Mama Raccoon and whispering to her in a soothing voice. "He's breathing," Tommy said with relief. "Weak, but breathing." Dr. Sarah Whitman suddenly appeared in my living room. Apparently Agent Chen had called her directly. "I'm here now," she said simply. "Let me help." As she examined Bandit, she shook her head in amazement. "This little one has been through more trauma than most animals survive in a lifetime. But he keeps fighting, just like his grandma Martha would have," Mrs. Henderson said softly. That's when Dr. Whitman looked up with tears in her eyes. "Mr. Patterson, Martha Patterson was my mentor in veterinary school. She taught me that every life matters, no matter how small. I should have helped you from the beginning." As dawn broke over Willow Creek for the second time since this adventure began, I sat in my kitchen surrounded by family, both human and animal. Tommy was documenting everything for the federal investigation. Mrs. Henderson was cooking breakfast for everyone. Dr. Whitman was setting up a proper medical station for Bandit's continued recovery. But the best sight of all was Mama Raccoon, finally relaxed enough to groom her baby properly while he ate solid food from a small dish. We'd survived the night, but Caldwell's final words haunted me. What mineral rights? What was really at stake here that made powerful people willing to kill innocent animals and threaten an old man's family? I had a feeling our fight for justice was just beginning. 6 months later, I'm sitting on my front porch watching the most beautiful sight an old man could ask for. Little Bandit, though he's not so little anymore, is teaching his own babies how to wash their food in Martha's old bird bath. His mama, now a grandmother, sits regally nearby, supervising the lesson with the patience that only comes from surviving the impossible. Tommy never did go back to Chicago. "Why would I leave when everything I need is right here?" he said, and Lord knows he was right. He's enrolled in veterinary school now, following in Dr. Whitman's footsteps, carrying on the tradition Martha started all those years ago. The legal proceedings took months to sort out, but justice was served with a side of poetic irony that would have made Martha laugh. Caldwell's desperate final words led Agent Chen to investigate the mineral rights he'd mentioned, and what they found was bigger than anyone expected. A major corporation had been planning to extract natural gas from under our entire area, but they needed to eliminate the wildlife first to avoid environmental protection laws. The conspiracy reached all the way to the state capitol, involving a senator, 3 state representatives, and a dozen corporate executives. When the dust settled, Caldwell and his bosses were looking at federal prison sentences that would keep them locked up longer than bandits' natural lifespan. But the best part, the court declared our entire area a protected wildlife sanctuary in perpetuity. No development, no mining, no corporate interference, just families, both human and animal, living the way God intended. Mrs. Henderson, Dolores as I call her now, has become the unofficial guardian of every orphaned animal within 50 miles. Her backyard looks like Noah's Ark most days, and she's happier than I've seen her since before her grandson's accident. "Turns out all I needed was a purpose," she told me last week while bottle feeding an abandoned fox kit. Dr. Whitman opened a wildlife rehabilitation center right here in Willow Creek with funding from the settlement money the court awarded us. She named it the Martha Patterson Memorial Wildlife Sanctuary, and there's a bronze plaque by the entrance with Martha's favorite saying, "Every creature deserves a chance at life." Officer Miller got promoted to deputy chief after his courage during our crisis became public knowledge. He stops by every week to check on our extended family, though I suspect it's really because Dolores makes the best apple pie in 3 counties. But the real miracle is what happened to our community. Word spread about our fight to save Bandit, and suddenly Willow Creek became known as the town that chose love over profit. Families started moving here specifically because they wanted to raise their children somewhere that valued compassion. Our population has doubled, our local businesses are thriving, and our school now has a mandatory wildlife education program. Tommy often finds me in the evenings, sitting in Martha's old chair on the porch, watching the Raccoon family play in the yard. "Do you think Grandma knows?" he asked just last night. I pointed to the bird bath, where Bandit was gently showing his smallest baby how to dip his paws in the water. "Son, your grandma is in every act of kindness, every moment of compassion, every choice to protect something innocent and vulnerable. She's not gone. She's multiplied." The phone rings inside the house, and Tommy goes to answer it. When he comes back out, he's grinning from ear to ear. That was Agent Chen. The last of Caldwell's conspirators just got sentenced, 25 years in federal prison. "Good," I say. But my attention is caught by something happening in the yard. Bandit has climbed down from the bird bath and is walking directly toward the porch. He stops at the bottom of the steps and looks up at me with those intelligent dark eyes. Then he does something that brings tears to my eyes. He reaches into a small pouch I hadn't noticed before and pulls out a perfect acorn. He places it carefully on the bottom step, sits back on his haunches, and gives me what I swear is a nod of thanks before scampering back to his family. "Every year," I tell Tommy, "every year for 6 months they brought me something. Acorns, pretty stones, interesting leaves. Bandit's teaching his children to be grateful." Tommy sits down beside me on the porch swing Martha and I installed 30 years ago. "Grandpa, do you ever wonder what would have happened if you hadn't answered the door that morning?" I think about it for a moment. watching Mama Raccoon gather her expanding family for their evening migration back to their den in the old oak tree. I suppose Bandit would have died. Caldwell would have gotten away with his crimes. This land would be destroyed, and I'd still be a bitter old man talking to shadows, I say. But more than that, I would have broken the last promise I made to your grandmother. What promise was that? To remember that love doesn't ask permission, it just shows up. As the sun sets behind our protected forest, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink that Martha always said were God's way of signing his artwork, I feel a peace I haven't known since she passed. The Raccoon family disappears into the trees, safe and protected in a sanctuary that will outlive us all. Tommy's already planning his career around wildlife veterinary medicine. Dolores is organizing a regional wildlife protection network. Dr. Whitman is training the next generation of animal advocates. Officer Miller is implementing community policing programs that prioritize environmental protection. And me. Well, at 73, I've learned that it's never too late to become the person you were meant to be. Every morning I wake up knowing that somewhere in these woods, a raccoon family is thriving because someone chose compassion over convenience, love over law, hope over despair. Martha always said that the measure of a life isn't how long you live, but how much love you leave behind. Looking around at all the lives that have been changed, human and animal alike, I think she'd be proud of what her simple philosophy accomplished. The porch light comes on automatically as darkness settles over Willow Creek. Tommy heads inside to study for his veterinary exams. Dolores's house glows warmly across the yard, and I can see her silhouette in the window, probably tending to whatever creature needed her help today. In the distance, I hear the soft chittering of the raccoon family settling in for the night, safe in their sanctuary, raising their young in a world where kindness won and greed lost. Thank you, Martha, I whisper to the stars, for teaching me that every creature deserves a chance at life, including this old fool who forgot how to love until a crying mother raccoon reminded him. Tomorrow will bring new challenges, new animals needing help, new opportunities to choose compassion. But tonight, surrounded by the family we've built and the sanctuary we've protected, I'm content knowing that love truly does find a way. Bless your heart, little bandit. You saved us all. At 73, Earl Patterson thought his days of making a difference were behind him. Widowed, isolated, and drowning in regret over broken promises to his late wife Martha, he'd resigned himself to talking to shadows. Then a crying raccoon mother appeared on his doorstep with her dying baby, and everything changed. What started as one man's desperate attempt to save a tiny life became a community-wide fight against corporate greed, environmental destruction, and the cynicism that too often defines our golden years. Earl's courage to choose compassion over convenience didn't just save little Bandit. It reunited him with his estranged grandson, transformed a bitter neighbor into a lifelong friend, exposed a criminal conspiracy, and created a protected wildlife sanctuary that will endure for generations. His story proves that it's never too late to become the person you were meant to be, that love truly doesn't ask permission, it just shows up. Sometimes the most profound purpose finds us when we least expect it, wrapped in fur and delivered by a mother's desperate love. Every act of kindness ripples outward, touching lives we may never know we've changed. Share your thoughts. Have you ever had an unexpected encounter with wildlife that changed your perspective? What small act of compassion could you choose today that might create ripples of positive change in your community?